Hi, welcome back to Crypto Mischief. Richie here. Thanks for joining me. For today's exciting episode, I have something a little bit different to the usual, where I'm going to be interviewing a man called Michael Rosmer. Michael Rosmer is a crypto tax expert and also an advisor to the DApp, DeFi Yield, which is an essential tool for anyone who wants to be yield farming. And I know if you're watching this, probably you enjoy yield farming because I talk about it a lot. He and his team are so knowledgeable about yield farming and DeFi that they've actually put it all together into a book, which is this one right here. Let's get the light off it. There we go. The Wall Street era is over. A DeFi Bible. A lot of you have asked me recently over email and also in YouTube comments about safety and strategy for yield farming and how to get the best of it, because it is a pretty new landscape, right? It's only not even 2 years old, the idea of yield farming. And if DeFi, which I think it will take off in the future and it will be mass adopted, imagine if you get on top of this right now, you become a master of yield farming. You know exactly how it works, exactly how to do it. Well, if you go through this here book, you're going to pick it up. You're going to master this and you're going to be able to reap the benefits. This book is available on Amazon. I'll leave the link in the description for it. You can find it yourself. You can read the reviews. It's very highly rated and is also a bestseller on Amazon for finance. So the Wall Street era is over is a DeFi Bible, something you can pick up and reference time and time again when you're in trouble or you're not sure about what moves you should be making in these farms. It is a DeFi testament, clearly broken up in sections for whatever you need to find out about or whatever you need to check up on. Is it yield farming, liquidity farming, single asset staking, tax, okay, crypto tax? All these questions that we have in this very unknown space, so many of them are answered in this book. The Essential DeFi Guide. That's what this is, the Essential DeFi Guide. Don't leave home without it. You can't watch every single YouTube video or read every Medium article or read every website to find out this stuff. Why not put it all compiled into one source, right? You can get this tangibly, like I have. Tangible, nice. Or you can get the Kindle version, which is also updated every time they add a new chapter. They will update the Kindle version, so you will always be on top of the new technology or the new styles or new blockchains or things like that they're going to keep telling you about. Fantastic. It's because of this book that I'm talking to Michael Rosmer, because he is an expert in the field. So how about you sit back, relax, get yourself something to drink, and just see what he says. You're going to find a whole wealth of knowledge in this, and hopefully we all learn something. And most importantly, we get safer and wiser in this space, right? We should all be growing together. That's the whole idea of this channel, right? Stay together, grow together, yeah, gain together, learn together. So without further ado, let's get into the interview. Michael, welcome to the channel.
Thank you. Great to be here with you.
I would like to introduce everybody who's watching today to a very special guest of mine. This is Michael Rosmer. He is a tax expert. He is an offshore citizen. He is the co-founder of the DApp, DeFi Yield. DeFiYield.APP is the website, link in the description. And he's also a fellow YouTuber. Before we start, I thought I'd just give it a shot at trying to introduce a few of your projects, and you can correct me if I'm wrong or if I've missed anything. DeFi Yield is the world's only safe cross-chain asset management protocol based on machine learning, which means that the DeFi Yield app, right now on it, you can connect your wallet and follow all of your yields. All the farming that you're doing, you can find so much of it on this app. I love using this site. And I also love the DeFi Yield Twitter page, because on their Twitter page, if you subscribe to their Twitter, link in the description, you can get updates of very high yields almost as soon as they come out. And he is the mastermind behind a book, the book I just showed you, which is the Wall Street Era Over? Did I miss anything?
I mean, that's a good start. I have a channel, Offshore Citizen, so that's on YouTube. People can check that out. I guess regarding the book, yeah, it's here. You can get it on Amazon, either on Kindle or in paperback.
How about we begin with DeFi Yield? And could you tell me what is the short-term vision and the long-term vision for DeFi Yield?
Sure. So, I mean, short term, we've built what is, pretty much, as far as I know, the only cross-chain asset management platform. So you're probably super familiar. Your viewers are probably super familiar. that it's difficult to keep track of everything, right?
Yeah.
And if you're out farming, you've got reading rewards in various different places. What are those worth? Every asset is changing in value. You've got impermanent loss. You've got, it's just all over the place, right?
Yeah.
And so it's very, very helpful, pretty much necessary to have some sort of a tool, like a dashboard, to manage all of that. So we built that. And what's different, first of all, is that pretty much all the other projects out there can only work with EVM compatible chains. And so it's a lot of work, but we built the underlying layer so that you're able to work with non-EVM compatible chains, which over the long term is going to be probably pretty significant. So we've been working on this for quite a while. For those who don't know, we have a Telegram channel. It's probably the best Telegram channel on yield farming out there. So I encourage you to go and check that out.
It is fantastic.
And yeah, we try to bring out just like good information for the community all the time. We bring out, like you were saying, regular updates on, hey, what are the top API projects for stablecoins, for not stablecoins. Yes. And so a great resource in that respect. We're kind of supplementing that with all kinds of cool stuff. Like we built what is arguably the best impermanent loss calculator. You can go and check it out again on the website and use that. Lots of people don't really understand impermanent loss. They get in, they see some big APY, and then they go and get destroyed because that's not.
We've all done it.
There you go. Exactly. That trillion APY return that seems so good on Beefy, it's not actually quite so good as you might think.
Yeah.
So you've got that. We built out now basically CoinGecko of audits. The objective for us is making yield farming and DeFi accessible and safe. It's super complicated right now. It's really, I tell people it's like using MS-DOS back in the day. There's rug pulls, there's hacks, there's flash loan attacks, all these different things going on. What do you do to kind of navigate that? So our objective is basically to put together all the tools and the platform for you so that the 45 million Coinbase users out there can feel comfortable going and taking advantage of what is a really cool new technology.
That's great. So you were talking a little bit about the long-term vision of where it's going. So DeFi Yield is 1 year old, is that right?
Yeah, basically. It's hard to formalize when exactly we started, but sometime, DeFi summer would have been around the time that we started. So
in the long term, what are the long-term plans for DeFi Yield?
We're launching an L2 DEX. We're launching DeFi Safe. DeFi Safe is, I think, one of the most unique products out there, because right now, if somebody wants to say, hey, listen, is this project safe or not? They pretty much need to be capable of doing an audit. And audits are super expensive.
Yes.
The best audit firms are super backed up. We're in a situation where we built our own audit team, but most people don't have that accessibility. So we're applying machine learning to auditing smart contracts, which will allow you to get essentially like a credit rating for different projects to see, hey, listen, how risky is this? And, if you want to go total degen and, take all the risks on some ridiculous new project, okay, you can do that. But at least you'll be kind of eyes open. Whereas right now it's very opaque, right?
Yes.
This is, I think, going to go a really long way. And in my view, over the long term, I heard somebody say it this way. They said, in the future, lawyers won't be really doing law. Instead, they'll be auditing smart contracts because the smart contract will determine the nature of the agreement.
Yeah, I come across that all the time. You'll find a new DApp, a new yield farm. You think, wow, this looks really great. The design's amazing. Then you look over to the audit section and it will say either audit by tech rate coming soon. Always tech rates coming soon. This is a great idea. I also saw on Medium, you were talking about a token for DeFi Yield.
Yeah. We're launching a token here in the next few weeks. So that's super exciting. That's, been a long time in the making. We've, self-funded the project to a really high bill ourselves over the last year or so. And so now we're kind of putting it out to the community. We're providing a governance function.
I get the impression that's still top secret, which is good, but it's something to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I really recommend people, go join the Twitter, join the Telegram group, etc. If you care about yield farming, probably one of the smartest things you can do is go join the community. Yes. Just because There's lots of great people involved in there. There's lots of great information. You can stay up to date. It's probably the smartest way to stay on top of what the greatest projects are and avoid getting destroyed in some of the bad projects. So
yeah, and also in my opinion, launching a project, building the community, building the trust, building a workable DApp, and then launching a token is a very smart way to do this, because I've noticed a lot of places do it the complete other way around. And it just never seems to work.
It's crazy. There's projects that have no product at all. Yeah. They're getting some huge amount of money coming in, and it's like, what's this based on? So yeah.
So you are also a tax expert, I hear.
I am, yes. International tax specifically, but yes.
Could you please tell me, how is crypto treated for federal income tax purposes?
Well, so it depends on what type of crypto we're talking about. So of course you can buy a token, you can buy Bitcoin, you can hodl it for 10 years, and then it's a long-term capital gain, right?
Okay.
Now, again, depending on where you're from, that could be different. So, for a US standpoint, from a British standpoint, from a Canadian standpoint, this is a long-term capital gain. If you're trading in short-term, then that's basically going to be taxed as short-term capital gains. Typically, yield farming is taxed as earned income. Now, I think some of the things that are important for people to know is every time you swap between one token and another, it's typically a taxable event. Now, again, country to country, that can vary a little. If you're in France, then that's not true. If you're in Holland, that's not true. So there's a few exceptions to that. But broadly speaking, if you're trading a lot, or you're doing something where you're swapping between one token and another, which we all do, right? It's really normal in the pursuit of this stuff. Each time you do that, that's a taxable event. So very, very important that you're on top of it.
Wow. Sounds quite complicated.
It is. And that's again where, you can go ahead and use DeFIYIELD.APP, you can plug your wallet in, because otherwise, how are you going to keep track of all this stuff, right? How are you going to know, I deposited on here, I was getting token rewards, they were worth this at the time I got them, it's coming out block by block, so there's this continuous yield. Then I'm harvesting on auto, and my taxable when I harvest, or my taxable when it's eligible to be harvested. What was the value at the time that I swapped over to BNB or something like that? You just go down this line where it's like, okay, this is way too complicated to keep track of. I've had clients say, "Hey, listen, good luck for the IRS figuring this out because I can't figure it out." So.
Yeah, I imagine the forms is going to be huge.
Yeah, exactly.
Will the governance token be taxable?
Yeah, definitely. So, of course, as I mentioned before, with respect to tax, you have it where if you buy something, you hold it, the value goes up, you sell it, you're taxable, and whether it's short-term or long-term, determine short-term or long-term capital gain. The other thing that's important to note is anytime, this is for our token, it's for any token, let's say you go and you deposit USDC or ETH or whatever it is that you're doing in order to participate in the token launch, right? Then become taxable on the change of value when you get that token. So that's an important distinction to understand. So again, if people are interested in this subject, they can go check out my YouTube channel, Offshore Citizen, or you can reach out to me or whatever. Happy to give you some information on it. But yeah, you need to be very careful when you're participating in these things. There's obviously huge gains. I think the average upside on BSCPAD was 23x or something. So getting in early on these pre-sales make a lot of money. But do be aware that there are tax consequences associated.
Okay. Yeah, your YouTube channel is fantastic. It's a huge, wide array of information. I was surprised when I was looking through it. I was like, this isn't just crypto. This is like endless life choices that people will come across. At different points in everyone's life, they will come across some situations when they'll think, oh, no, this is really complicated. I have no idea what to do here. Like I was going through your playlists. Like you've really, you've touched on a lot of them. It's a great channel.
Excellent. Yeah, that's the idea. Try and speak to all different people and be able to say, okay, for you, here's what you should do. For you, here's what you should do. Because everybody's different. Yeah.
And so what about the recently published DeFi Bible? The Wall Street era is over. Do you consider this book more for crypto newbies or for OGs?
So we tried to include something for everyone. And one of the things that I'm most proud about, I can't take credit for it, the team did a great job, it was a collaborative effort, is pretty much everybody that I've talked to, including people who are pretty sophisticated in crypto, tell me they got something out of it, right? They found things. This being said, when we kind of broke down who we were going after, think it was really, again, people who have some basic experience with crypto, people who, it's the Coinbase user who they bought and sold tokens, but they don't understand DeFi and this whole other area. And helping those people to transition from, hey, I know about crypto, I like the idea of crypto, maybe I've bought Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever, to, immersing yourself in this whole world, which is what I call the biggest revolution in finance in the last 100 years.
Yes, definitely. I had that the other day, actually. It was an email from a woman who was trying to move Matic from Coinbase into Aave. But
yep.
She had a lot of trouble. So I actually, after we finished it, so I think after this interview, I'm going to send her the link to your book. For
perfect.
Sure.
Sounds good. Yeah. One thing that people should know is if you get the digital version of it, we continually update it. So, you basically have, the space is changing really fast, right? So, it was like, okay, as we were going through developing, it's like, oh, hang on. Now Matic became popular, so we have to go and, do some stuff on Matic and, and then you'll get Solana, whatever else it is that comes out, right? We don't know for the next year, but we'll continue updating it. So it's always a resource you can go back to. It's like the Bible, the encyclopedia, whatever for DeFi.
That's fantastic. And no extra charge to the first purchase of the digital.
Exactly.
It just continues to grow.
Yeah. It's like a subscription in that sense. So that's amazing.
This is brilliant. That's brilliant. So again, the link for this book is in the description. But let's talk a little bit about providing liquidity. Is there any difference between providing liquidity to the single-sided and pair pools in terms of taxability of the future gains? And which one do you prefer in the long term?
Okay, so from a tax standpoint, any time that you are providing liquidity, anytime you're yield farming, there's a possibility in the future this may change because there's some court cases going on about this, but at the moment, that's income. So it doesn't really matter what the situation is, you're earning income in the form of the rewards you're getting. And you would basically have to calculate what is the value of that over time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but then if it's pair pools, the impermanent loss would continually be changing. So
Sure. From an impermanent loss standpoint, yeah. But what I'm saying is that the rewards that you're earning are taxable as you earn them.
Okay, yes, I get that. That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, and of course, from my standpoint, obviously, I think there's a personal preference in terms of like, how do you want to yield farm? And some people do very well, going much riskier than, for me, I'm interested in minimizing permanent loss. So I'm interested in saying, okay, great, let's use, stable coins, or let's use, wrapped BTC with Ren BTC, or, something like this.
Yeah.
Or else, if I'm going to go into some other one, I want to vary the ratio, maybe 2.5 to 97.5 to try and minimize the impermanent loss. I really recommend anyone who's going to do any sort of yield farming, go use our impermanent loss calculator, because you're going to find that often the impermanent loss is much greater than you expect.
Yes.
And especially in a lot of these 50-50 pools. So
yeah, definitely. What do you think of going in with, for example, you're on the Binance Smart Chain, and obviously the biggest kind of reward on Binance Smart Chain would be cake. So what about pairing BNB and cake? What do you think about that?
You've got the impermanent loss opportunities with BNB and cake too. And it's interesting that when you have some of these pairs, even though you're effectively going long on the one and short on the other, sometimes it's better just to hold the token, right? It's good. So I don't know if you saw this, but earlier this year, I actually did really well on just, you could go onto Beefy or Auto Farm and you could stake just single assets as cake. And the APYs were actually pretty good. It was like 326% or whatever. But yeah, the returns were pretty good for mitigating that side of the risk, right? Obviously, there's other risks associated, but I thought that was a pretty attractive place to be, because if you're going to be long on the asset anyway, why not also earn some yield on it?
So then you're saying you probably prefer single-sided pools as opposed to pairs?
Yeah, look, you have to weigh it out, because there's often much higher rewards with pairs, right? So I think that's a personal preference. I think, for me personally, I'm going to kind of assess the market and see where things are at and say, okay, great. Depending on, what's the APY that I can get, how comfortable am I with the project, et cetera, I'm going to make a decision case by case. So yeah, I don't want to really tell somebody, hey, you should do this or you should do this. Like, they both are options. And it's partially about how comfortable you are with the risk and once you understand the risk that you're dealing with, and then what is the yield on that. I have done both, and I would continue to do both, just depending on how I assess the risk to reward.
Yeah. Also, I guess the fear and the greed as it grows and declines, like the very large dump that came, I guess that was about a month ago now, from Bitcoin. Like a lot of new investors suddenly grew up. I realized that I was getting a lot more emails just saying like, I think I'm into stable coins now. I think stable coins are great. But before, I was having conversations with people who are saying stable coin, that's just $1. Like, I don't need that.
Yeah, I was very fortunate because I was terrified when the market was up. Yeah, exactly. So I was just like, hey guys, it looks bad to me. Go and move into stable coins, do some staking, do some yield farming, maybe do active trading, whatever. And so I was very, very lucky that way. I didn't get destroyed like some people did. But
yeah, that's why you should just subscribe to your channel. Anyone who saw that video and took your advice, they saved a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, there's a difference between seeing the video and actually taking the advice. So I'm not sure that everybody who watched it actually did that. And it's never popular to say that you're in a bubble when you're in a bubble, which is like this really bizarre psychological thing that happens, right? Nobody wants to hear that. There's like, you'd think they'd be like, hey, who cares? Like, whatever someone's going to say. But no, people will get like angry with you. No.
Don't pump it. How about we talk a little bit about the IRS?
Sure. Everybody's favorite topic.
Okay. So do trading platforms like Coinbase or Binance, do they report to the IRS or the SEC?
Of course they report to the IRS. And this is not just like, we're talking about the US and the IRS, but, if you go to Canada and the CRA, increasingly these exchanges are reporting, and I think they will more and more report. If you go in with the mindset that, hey, they're not reporting, so I'm not going to get caught, that's a bad mindset, because they're going to push them more and more in that direction. You just need to know that centralized exchanges will report. Your information is going to get out there. If they can tie a wallet address to you, now they can track across the blockchain what's going on. They're getting really sophisticated in terms of being able to do on-chain analytics, apply big data to it. And, more and more, that's a vulnerability. So, I would suggest people not think that they can outsmart the system, for sure, if you're using a centralized exchange. If you're in a situation where you're like, hey, I mined some Bitcoin 10 years ago or something, and nobody knows it's my wallet, like, hey, maybe you might get away with that. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but centralized exchanges, of course, they're reporting, and they will report, and that's something we have to deal with.
Okay, so then, is it possible to hide crypto from the IRS?
Well, I mean, of course, this is a $64 million question for some people.
Yeah.
So probably if the person did things right, they probably could, right? Like, I'm sure there are sophisticated technical people out there who, can go and do all kinds of things. Do I recommend you do that? No, I can't recommend you do that. I think that, if you're not an American, it doesn't matter if you hide it from the IRS. You're then working for your own tax department. But yeah, I think that what we're seeing, just with, like, you saw this thing, whatever it was, a week or two ago, with the FBI managing to get money from this wallet and how they tracked it.
Yeah,
there wasn't a lot of information on it, but that's just the start, right? Like, imagine what tools they'll have in 2 years. They're going to be able to do all kinds of insane things, and they're going to be able to infer a lot just by the relationships between wallets. And so, yeah, I would be very careful about thinking that you can hide it. I think if you're in a situation where you're making a lot of money, it pays to put a little bit of time and energy up front to try and optimize the tax legally, because then you don't have to worry about it. In the case of the IRS, they actually have a thing where they say that you need to pay taxes on illegal drug sales. Nice. So, they don't care or not, they still want you to pay tax.
Say I am mining cryptocurrency, okay? Say I am. Do I have to pay self-employment tax? And what expenses can I deduct when I report my taxable income?
It depends on how you structure yourself. You could structure yourself in such a way so that you don't have to pay self-employment tax. And, if possible, I would recommend that. And one of the things that I definitely recommend people do is if you start making any reasonable amount of money, one of the best ways to reduce the tax is to put it into a business. So, anything mining, staking, lending, yield farming, etc., these are all generating regular income. So you can deduct expenses. You can do all the normal tax optimization strategies with it. And so, yeah, that's like one of my biggest recommendations for people is treat it like a business. Basically, this is not a job anymore. This is like, you just gain all these benefits by doing that way. So why wouldn't you?
My takeaway from what you're saying here about tax is basically that if anyone thinks that they can get away with it now, or they are getting away with it now, they're not going to get away with it in the next coming years, because the advancements of technology that are catching tax evasion and catching people who are not reporting their earnings in DeFi, they're going to eventually catch up to them, and then they're going to be caught in a situation where they're having to backtrack. But how are we going to be able to remember what we were farming 3 weeks ago if we're not if we're not writing it down right now and trying to figure out like what we're doing with it? Is this kind of what you were getting at here?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not going to tell you, whether you will or will get caught in the future. I mean, my crystal ball is broken, right?
Yeah.
What I think is that the ability to get away with it will get less and less. And I think, is it a good bet that you'll be able to get away with it in the future? Understanding how aggressive they are, understanding how much they're improving the technology. Here's a simple example. I had a call with an attorney who we deal with yesterday. And we were just discussing a case of somebody who'd made a lot of money, okay? And one of the questions was, hey, listen, have you declared those cryptocurrency wallets? And if they consider a cryptocurrency wallet to be a foreign bank account, well, now all of a sudden, the fine for not reporting that is 50% of the value of the account for every year you don't report it.
Wow.
So there have been court cases where somebody had an undeclared Swiss bank account for 4 years, and the fine was double the total balance of the account. I mean, it's really, really ridiculous and punitive. So, do you want to take a risk that you end up in that situation a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road? I mean, it sounds like a bad risk to me. I think you're better off just like, I'm not saying like go and give all your money to the IRS. I think that's terrible. Government does a totally crap job of using your money. But invest right now in planning smart, so that you can optimize that tax, so that looking out 10 years from now, your gains are probably only going to increase, right? The effect of compounding is huge.
Yeah.
So, people who held their Bitcoin from 2017 are feeling really good today. Well, probably people who are holding today are going to feel really good in 2024 or whatever the number is. Looking at that, plan now, because it's going to pay off more and more as your gains grow.
Great. That's really great advice. Really great advice. I have one question I was thinking about the reward token, okay, that is offered from basically any farm that you go into. The cliche is never buy the reward token because it's going to dump on you, So, for example, Pancake Bunny token, Cake token, Fish token on Matic, or, there's millions of them. So what's your opinion on purchasing the reward token? When to buy it, when to not buy it?
I mean, personally, I usually would follow the advice that you're mentioning, which is I usually wouldn't buy it. Yeah, I think, a couple of the exceptions are stuff like Cake, right? Like I bought Cake and I did really well on that. I think there was a time where you could buy, Auto and do pretty well on it. So, that's a very difficult, I think there's this question the very, very common investment statement, which is don't tell me what to buy, tell me when to buy it.
Yes.
And so think about it from that standpoint. You're like, all right, there are probably limited exceptions when, you can buy it and, you can have some value. But I think generally the economics are, people are going to be selling. There's selling pressure because these reward tokens are being issued, and that's going to have a downward effect on the price. So generally speaking, it's probably not going to be a good investment.
Good answer. Yeah, rare. I try not to buy the reward token, but about once every month, I look at my wallet and I think, how did that get there? Why do I have this reward token? Whoops. So my last question today is just about it's about kind of farming strategy. Okay, is it best to split up your funds and farm in a lot of different dApps for the different APYs and trying to match everything up, or is it wiser just to stick with fewer farms and more capital in those farms? What do you think?
Yeah. So in my opinion, there's probably a median point here, and I'll explain this kind of mathematically. So first of all, I think, diversification can sometimes be diversification. So, if you go into farms that you don't know anything about and go away from ones that you do know something about, you're probably taking on risk without necessarily return. So I think from that standpoint, it's probably not very wise. On the other hand, it's really interesting. If you look mathematically, this is something that people don't seem to get or never realize. Volatility undermines returns. So just if you take the simple example of, say you earn an average of 6% interest per cycle, whatever that cycle is, right? You go 1.06 times 1.06, on and on out over time. And you do that over 6 periods. Yeah. And then you compare that with another one where you say, hey, listen, I have 12. So it's basically like 0, 12, 0, 12, 0, 12, right? The average return is the same, right? You say, okay, great. I have 36 divided by 6. It's 6 average, or 12 divided by 3 is also 36. Mm-hmm. But the return is actually higher on the 666, the one with less volatility, than it is on the other one. This is like a weird mathematical quirk that people don't understand.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, the intent, the desire is to hey, let's just degen in and get this huge return. But in the macro, having some degree of diversification between various different pools, you're going to have some are up and down. The fact that it levels out actually increases your return. And so from that standpoint, I think not only is it wise to avoid, there are projects that you think are really solid and then they get rug pulled, right?
Yes.
So having all your money in that project, probably not a great risk. But even taking that aside, there's a mathematical benefit in terms of return, basically compressing the volatility on your returns and evening it out more. So I would generally say you want to be diversified somewhat, but don't over diversify to the point where you're going into pools that just could be some total trash.
Yeah. And the more you just diversify, the more you can use DeFi yield to follow it all. So
True. You can do that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you very much for the interview today, Michael. It was lovely talking to you. And
great talking to you too.
Yeah, really nice to meet you. I'm looking forward to the release of the token and the future for DeFi Yield app. And I'm looking forward to watching your next videos on your channel. You've got a long-time fan.
Really. Perfect. Sounds good.